The forest of Black Hollow had always carried a strange stillness. Even from a distance, its treetops looked darker than any other patch of land in the region, as if sunlight avoided it. The locals never went near it after sunset, and even in daylight, their steps remained cautious. But none of this mattered to the four friends who walked toward it on the morning of October 14th, 2016. Their laughter echoed freely as they crossed the open field leading to the forest entrance. Daniel walked ahead with a camera in his hand, telling the viewers of their small YouTube channel how they were about to explore one of the most untouched forests in the state. Behind him was Mia, adjusting her camera lenses, while Ethan joked loudly about how this trip would either make them famous or get them eaten by bears. Laura, who rarely spoke, wrote something quietly in the journal she carried everywhere. None of them noticed the farmer watching from afar, leaning on his wooden fence. His expression wasn't annoyance, it was concern. He had seen people go in before. He had seen fewer return. By the time the group reached the forest's edge, the morning sunlight had begun to dim behind a thin veil of mist that floated low over the ground. It wrapped around their ankles like cold fingers, but the friends didn't think much of it. They were too focused on filming their introduction. Daniel smiled at the camera, unaware that this moment, this single captured frame, would later become the last clear evidence of their safety. Inside the forest, the temperature dropped quickly. The noise of civilization faded behind them, replaced by an unnatural quiet. No birds were singing, no insects hummed. The silence was so complete that even their footsteps sounded intrusive. Still, the group continued deeper, joking, talking, filming everything. When they found the first strange mark on a tree, Mia zoomed her camera closer, assuming it was just an animal scratch. But the grooves were too symmetrical, too deep, and too recently made. Ethan touched one of the marks and frowned. "That's weird," he said. Laura, glancing up from her journal, whispered, "It looks like a warning sign." But Daniel laughed it off and told them there was nothing to fear. Hours passed in their journey. According to the recovered footage, the last time they were seen relaxed and smiling was around late morning. Daniel was talking about how peaceful the forest was. Ethan was teasing Mia. Laura was writing again, occasionally looking up as if she felt something watching them. And something was. In the video files found later, the camera captured tiny movements between the trees. A shape. A fleeting shadow. Something tall. Something that blended into the darkness, but moved against it. None of the friends noticed. Not yet. Stranger than the shadow was the voice. At exactly 11:03 a.m., one of their microphones picked up a whisper. It was faint, buried under leaves crunching beneath their feet, almost impossible to catch unless amplified. But technicians eventually did amplify it, and the whisper was unmistakably saying a single word: leave. None of them reacted at the time. They didn't hear it, or maybe they dismissed it as wind. But there was no wind that day. Their journey deeper into Black Hollow grew increasingly tense. The light between the branches grew weaker, as though the sun itself refused to follow them in. The silence grew heavier. Even their laughter gradually faded, replaced by hesitant conversation. Daniel paused the group around noon to check the map. The forest trail drawn on the paper didn't match the path they were walking. Trees seemed to twist in patterns that weren't natural. Landmarks they passed earlier disappeared when they looked back. Mia complained that she felt like someone was standing behind them. Every time she turned around, no one was there. Ethan tried to lighten the mood, but even he began to grow uneasy. He kept glancing into the thick underbrush as if expecting someone or something to step out. Meanwhile, Laura wrote faster and faster. Pages later found in her journal revealed strange sketches of tall figures between trees, things she claimed she saw through the corner of her eye. Around late afternoon, the atmosphere shifted. The air became colder. Even the color of the forest seemed to darken. They walked slower now, speaking in low voices, constantly checking the trail. At one point, they heard a sound, like something stepping on dry branches. When they turned around, the forest was empty. But Mia's camera captured a figure, standing far behind them, barely visible, not moving. A figure that disappeared when she zoomed in. By evening, the tension had grown into fear. The friends argued about turning back. Daniel insisted they were close to the river on the map. Laura pleaded that something was wrong. Ethan said he felt sick, like someone was breathing on his neck. They continued anyway, unaware that the same farmer who had watched them enter the forest had already told the sheriff that 4 more kids were likely lost inside the woods. Night arrived faster than it should have. The footage showed the darkness dropping suddenly, unnaturally. The forest turned black, and the mist rose again, this time thick, crawling around them like living smoke. The last clear audio recorded their conversation. "Do you feel that? What is that smell? Mia, stop. Something's behind us." Then the camera turned sharply. 2 glowing eyes stared from the distance. Not animal eyes, not human. Something taller, something still. And the screen glitched with static. That was the moment the real fear began. And none of them knew. They had already been watched for hours. The deeper the 4 friends moved into Black Hollow Forest, the more unfamiliar the world around them became. Though it was still early morning when they crossed the old wooden sign at the entrance, it felt as if the forest swallowed the daylight the moment they stepped inside. The temperature was unnaturally low, the air thick with a damp smell that clung to their clothes. Daniel wiped the lens of his camera and continued speaking with forced enthusiasm, his voice echoing faintly in the heavy silence. Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today we're exploring Black Hollow Forest, apparently one of the oldest untouched forests around. Some people say it's haunted, but... He shrugged and flashed a grin. We'll see about that. His attempt at humor didn't land the way he expected. Even he felt the weight of the place. Mia walked behind him, tightening her backpack straps, her eyes darting from tree to tree. The forest felt too still, too silent. She lifted her camera and tried to capture the beauty of the morning light filtering through the branches, but the footage came out strangely dim, as if the forest refused to be filmed. Ethan started humming loudly to break the tension, joking about how they should charge the ghosts rent if they found any. But even he noticed something strange. Every time he stopped humming, it felt like the silence became heavier, like something was listening. Laura kept looking down at her journal, flipping between pages as if searching for something she had written earlier. She walked with the others, but her senses felt sharper, the way they did when someone was standing too close behind her. She tried to ignore the feeling, but her hands trembled as she wrote down simple observations. The air changes here. Something feels wrong. I feel watched. They reached a narrow trail where the trees grew closer together, forming a dark path with only slivers of sunlight breaking through. Daniel slowed down. The air tasted metallic, the same way air feels before a storm. But there were no clouds in the sky, no sign of weather changing, just an invisible heaviness pressing against them. Then they noticed the symbols. Carved deep into the bark of several trees were strange markings, long curved lines intersecting jagged shapes that didn't resemble any known language. They were too clean, too precise, as if someone or something had made them recently. The wood around the carvings looked unnaturally fresh. Daniel touched one of the symbols, drawing his fingers along the grooves. Some kind of old tribal marking? He guessed, but the lines didn't resemble anything human. Not a letter, not a pattern, not even art. It felt like a warning. Mia zoomed her camera in on the carvings. "These weren't made with a knife," she whispered. "They're too deep. Something strong did this." Before anyone could respond, a low wind whispered through the trees, carrying a faint sound, almost like a voice. They froze. The sound was soft, indecipherable, but it felt like it came from far deeper within the forest. The wind died instantly, and the silence returned, thicker than before. They pushed forward, pretending nothing was wrong, but their pace slowed.
The forest smelled different now, a mixture of wet soil, rotting wood, and something else beneath it, a faint smell like burnt metal. Laura noticed it first and covered her nose. "Does anyone else smell that?" she asked. Ethan sniffed the air and frowned. "Yeah, that's weird. Like something's rusting?" None of them knew that search teams years earlier had reported the same strange metallic odor near the site where earlier victims had been found. The deeper they went, the more the forest seemed to close in around them. Branches looked like skeletal fingers reaching inward. The fog grew thicker, sliding low across the ground in slow, eerie waves. Daniel checked the GPS on his phone. The location dots spun in circles, unable to pinpoint their position. "Signal's gone," he muttered. The others took out their phones. No signal, no data, no compass reading. The forest blocked everything. They kept walking. Eventually, they reached a small clearing. The light filtering through the treetops was dim and yellow, as if the sun were struggling to reach them. The place felt wrong, even beautiful in a haunting way. Moss-covered stones sat in a circle, and the ground looked disturbed, as if something had been dragged across it recently. Mia wandered to the center and knelt down. "Someone's been here." Her voice was barely audible. Ethan joined her. "Recently?" She nodded. The soil was loose, overturned. Footprints, too faint to identify, crossed over each other. Daniel filmed everything. "This is amazing," he said, though his voice lacked its usual confidence. "It's like a forgotten ritual site or something." But Laura stood still at the edge of the clearing. Her eyes locked on something between the trees on the opposite side. She couldn't see it clearly. A shape. Tall. Completely still. Almost blending into the shadows. She blinked, and it was gone. She didn't scream. She didn't move. She just whispered, "We shouldn't be here." Her voice cut through the air like a blade. The laughter stopped. The filming stopped. The forest felt darker. Daniel approached her. Hey, we're fine. It's just a forest." But she didn't look at him. She whispered again, "Something's here." Before he could reply, the camera captured a faint clicking sound, rhythmic, slow, echoing between the trees. Click, click, click. It wasn't a branch falling, not footsteps, not an animal. It was deliberate, measured, like something tapping against the trees as it watched them. The clicking stopped suddenly, replaced by a long exhale that none of them recognized. Not human, not animal. A breath from somewhere deep in the forest. Laura grabbed Daniel's arm. "We need to go back, now." But the trail behind them no longer looked familiar. The path they had walked minutes ago was gone, swallowed by mist and shifting branches. The forest had changed its shape. They turned in circles, searching for a landmark, but every direction looked the same. Dark trees, thick fog, no visible way out. Daniel tried to remain calm. "All right, no panic. We'll retrace our steps. It's just mist." As they walked in what they hoped was the right direction, something snapped a branch high above them. They all looked up. But the treetops were empty. Then another sound came, faint, but close. A whisper. Not carried by the wind, not accidental, direct, intentional. "Leave." Mia gasped. Ethan froze. Daniel tightened his grip on the camera. Laura stepped away slowly, her eyes wide with terror. The whisper came again, slightly louder. "Leave." But it wasn't coming from one direction. It was everywhere. Above them, around them, inside the trees. And then, for a moment so brief the camera barely caught it, Mia's lens captured a dark figure crossing between the trees at impossible speed. A tall shadow, too tall, too thin, moving in complete silence. That was the moment their breathing turned shaky. The forest was no longer quiet. It was alive. It was aware. And it had noticed them. Ethan broke the silence. "Guys, run."
Ethan's voice cracked when he said the word run, but the others didn't immediately move. Their bodies were frozen, locked in place by a fear so heavy it felt like it pressed on their bones. The forest had no wind, no birds, no sound. Yet they felt watched from every angle, as though dozens of eyes clung to the darkness behind the trees. Finally, Daniel whispered, "We don't run. We don't panic." But even he didn't sound like he believed it. The mist thickened around their legs, swirling slowly as if reacting to their fear. Mia kept her camera raised, though her hands shook violently. The lens caught small flickers of movement, branches bending, shadows slipping between trunks, shapes that vanished when she focused on them. Laura turned in a slow circle, her voice barely audible. The symbols, they weren't warnings. They were boundaries. Daniel looked at her sharply. "What are you talking about?" Her breathing rattled. "We crossed something we shouldn't have." Before Daniel could respond, the forest answered for her. A low groan rolled through the trees, deep, ancient, vibrating through the earth beneath their feet. It wasn't thunder. It wasn't an animal. It felt like the sound came from the forest itself. The group instinctively moved closer together. Ethan swallowed hard. "Okay, we stick together, we move slowly, straight line. Don't look back." But the forest didn't want them to move in a straight line. The moment they walked forward, the path they had chosen darkened. Branches above them twisted into a thick canopy, choking out the light. The trail behind them disappeared completely, swallowed by fog. Daniel lifted the camera and whispered into the microphone, "If anyone finds this, we didn't imagine this. Something is here. Something is..." The camera glitched. Static jumped across the screen before stabilizing again. Mia whispered, "Do you hear that?" At first, no one noticed, but then it became clear. Soft tapping. Not far. Not near. Everywhere. Tap, tap, tap. It was rhythmical, patient, like someone drumming their fingers on the trees. Ethan raised his flashlight and scanned the forest. Light cut through the mist, revealing only tall, silent trunks. Then something crossed the beam, thin and fast, like a shadow fleeing from the light. Laura gasped, "There! Something's there!" Ethan swung the light again, and for a half second they saw it, a tall black silhouette standing between two trees. Its limbs looked too long, its body slightly hunched. No face, no features, just a void. They blinked, and it was gone. Not moved, not hidden, gone. Mia's breathing stuttered. "Daniel, please, let's get out." Daniel nodded, but he kept the camera aimed forward, as if documenting the terror made it somehow safer. "We need to find higher ground," he whispered. "If we see a ridge or a break in the trees, we can get orientation." But as they walked, the forest grew stranger. The trees leaned inward, forming unnatural shapes above them, curved arches, sharp angles, twisted patterns that made no sense. The roots beneath their feet felt warm, like a pulse throbbed within them. After several minutes of walking, the clicking returned, louder this time. Tap, tap, tap. It echoed from the left, then from the right, then from above. The canopy shuddered as something moved across it, swift, heavy, but impossible to see through the dense branches. Mia jerked her camera upward, but all she captured was darkness. A sudden whisper slid past their ears. "Turn back." Daniel spun around. "Who's there?" His voice bounced off the trees and died immediately, swallowed by the thick fog. No answer. Just another whisper, even closer this time. "Leave." Laura grabbed Mia's arm. "It's getting closer." Ethan's voice trembled. "We need to move. Now?" They began walking faster, their steps crunching through layers of dead leaves. The forest floor felt unstable, as if hollow beneath them. Yet they kept going. Then they reached the symbols again. Carved into the bark of a massive tree was another symbol, only this one was fresh. The wood flakes lay scattered on the ground, the edges of the carving still moist.
3 heavy claw marks sliced straight through the center of the symbol, deep enough to have required enormous force. Ethan stared at it. Something made that just now. Mia backed away, like it knew we'd come this way. Daniel slowly lowered his camera. We aren't alone. We've never been. Suddenly, a loud crack exploded through the trees, a branch snapping under weight. The sound was close, too close. They turned. Standing only a few meters away was the silhouette again, taller this time, clearer than before. The forest dimmed around it, as though the light itself recoiled from its presence. Its body swayed slightly, like a creature trying to mimic human movement but failing. No face, no eyes, just a void. It took one step forward. The ground shivered. Laura screamed, "Run!" The group bolted through the trees, branches whipped their faces, fog swallowed their ankles, their lungs burned as they pushed deeper into the forest. Behind them came the sound. The tapping had turned into footsteps, fast, heavy, following. Daniel looked back once, just for a second, and saw the silhouette gliding between the trees, not running, drifting. Its movements were smooth, unnatural, as though gravity didn't apply to it. He nearly tripped when he saw that its height had changed. It was taller now, much taller. "Go! Go!" he screamed. They ran until their legs threatened to give out. Every breath felt like cold knives in their chests. Mia dropped her water bottle without noticing. Ethan's flashlight flickered. Laura's journal fell open as she ran, pages tearing from the wind. Finally, they stumbled into a shallow ditch lined with old stones, collapsing against each other, gasping. The forest was silent again. Too silent. Ethan leaned against a tree, trying to catch his breath. Did we lose it? No one answered. Then from behind the trees, the whisper came once more. Closer. Colder. Unmistakable. Turn back. Laura burst into tears. Daniel clutched the camera to his chest. Mia covered her ears. Ethan stood completely still, staring into the darkness. And he said in a broken voice, "It doesn't want us to turn back. It wants us deeper." Before they could react, the tapping started again. This time, directly behind them. They turned slowly, but nothing was there. Only the trees. Only the mist. Only the symbols carved behind them, glowing faintly in the dying light. Then the camera picked up something. Barely visible, but real. A shadow stretching across the ground, long enough to belong to something towering over them. Yet no body cast it. The shadow moved first. Then the forest moved. Then the thing that had been watching stepped forward. And the scene ended in the dimming heartbeat of the forest.
The forest was already darker than it should have been when the group reached the narrow trail that curved between two towering oaks. The sun had dipped low, but not enough to justify the thickness of the shadows around them. It felt as if the deeper they walked, the more the light avoided this place. The camera, still half raised in Liam's hand, struggled to focus. Every frame turned slightly grainy, as though something unseen interfered with it. They were laughing less now. The earlier excitement had faded, replaced with a creeping awareness that something was changing around them. Something subtle, but heavy. Even the sound of their footsteps felt muffled, as if the air had thickened. Liam was the first to notice the shift. He stopped walking and lifted the camera to his ear, lightly tapping the side. "Hold on. Do you hear that?" he said, turning slowly. The others turned with him. "Hear what?" Melanie asked, her voice thin. Liam didn't answer immediately. He tilted his head, listening, searching. His brow creased. I don't know. It's like a hum. Low, almost like
He stopped mid-sentence, eyes widening slightly. Like someone whispering. A nervous laugh escaped from Ethan. Dude, stop messing with us. But Liam wasn't smiling. He took a few steps forward, holding the camera out like a shield. The forest was unnervingly still. The leaves overhead were motionless. Not a single bird chirped. Not a single branch creaked. It was a heavy, unnatural quiet, the kind that settled over a place where something terrible had happened or was about to. Then it came. Soft. Faint. Like breath sliding through the cracks of a closed door. A whisper. Liam froze. Melanie's hand covered her mouth. Even Ethan's bravado vanished. The whisper drifted through the trees, slow and dragging, as though the voice itself was tired of existing. Leave. Just one word, but it carried a weight that pressed down on all of them. The voice didn't sound human. It didn't sound animal. It sounded old, as if it had been echoing through this forest long before any of them were born. Ethan swallowed hard. Tell me that was the wind, he whispered. There is no wind, Sarah replied, barely audible. Her eyes darted around the tree line, searching for movement. She looked as though she expected something to step out from behind one of the trees at any second. Liam replayed the camera's audio, lowering the volume so they could hear clearly. The screen glowed weakly against the encroaching shadows. The static was heavy, as if something was breathing into the microphone. Then the whisper played again, clearer, sharper, like a warning etched into the air itself. Leave. Melanie grabbed Liam's arm. We should go. Seriously, something's wrong here. But Ethan shook his head quickly. No, this is exactly what we came for. This is footage, real footage. If we turn back now, we'll never know what it was. His voice tried to sound brave, but his eyes betrayed him. Fear trembled there, flickering like a flame struggling to stay alive. Sarah stepped forward, her flashlight trembling in her grasp. She shined it toward the direction the whisper had come from. The beam of light struck the underbrush, the trunks, the tangled branches, but nothing moved, nothing breathed. Still, the feeling of being watched grew heavier with every passing second. Liam pointed the camera into the darkness. Is anyone there? He called out, though the words felt fragile leaving his throat. They did not echo back. The forest swallowed sound, swallowed everything. For a moment, no one dared to breathe. Then, something shifted. A faint distortion rippled through the camera's display, bending the shapes of the trees, warping the shadows for a split second before returning to normal. Liam's voice broke. Did you see that? Melanie shook her head violently. No, we need to leave. Please, let's just go back. This isn't right. Ethan stepped toward her, trying to calm her. It's just interference. Old woods, weird signals, nothing supernatural. But even he didn't sound convinced. Sarah raised her flashlight again, higher this time, and the beam brushed against something on the nearest tree trunk. A mark. Deep, jagged, fresh, like a claw had cut straight through the bark. Sarah stepped closer, her breath trembling. Guys, these are new. Someone, or something, did this recently. Liam zoomed in with the camera. The mark looked less like a scratch and more like a warning symbol carved with violent purpose. A dark substance stained the grooves, almost like dried sap, but thicker. As they stared at the mark, the whisper returned. Not behind them, not ahead, not from any direction at all. This time, it was everywhere at once. Leave! Longer, slower, commanding, and for a moment, it felt like the forest itself had spoken. Melanie turned and ran, unable to take another second of it. Mel, wait, Sarah called. The others followed quickly, the camera jerking wildly as Liam sprinted after them. The whisper faded, swallowed by their frantic breaths and the rustle of their shoes hitting the forest floor. But even as they ran, even as the trail wound between the trees, even as the distance grew, one truth became increasingly horrifyingly clear. The voice had not been warning them. It had been disappointed. Whatever had whispered to them, whatever ancient thing lived in Black Hollow, it didn't want them to leave. It wanted them to go deeper. And now, it knew they were here.
Night settled over Black Hollow like a living creature, creeping in from every angle, slow at first, then all at once. The sky above them dimmed, fading from gray to a bruised, heavy blue, and as the final traces of daylight disappeared behind the treetops, the forest exhaled a chill that slithered through the air and coiled around their necks. Liam reached the clearing first, breath ragged, camera still clutched in his trembling hand. Melanie stood beside fallen tree, her arms wrapped around herself as if trying to keep something unseen from touching her. She didn't look at the others. She didn't look at the camera. She stared instead into the darkening woods where the whisper had come from, her eyes wide and unblinking. Sarah arrived next, collapsing to her knees as she tried to catch her breath. Ethan came last, his confident stride gone, replaced by hurried steps and frantic glances at the trees. And finally, silence again. Not peaceful silence. No, this was the same heavy, suffocating quiet they'd heard before, but now it was darker, thicker, the kind of silence that carries intent. Ethan paced the clearing. It was just a sound, just a weird sound. Wind, maybe. Animals. But even he didn't believe the words spilling from his mouth. Sarah wiped sweat and fear from her forehead. Animals don't whisper, and they don't carve symbols into trees. Melanie's voice cracked. I want to leave. Right now. We can make it back before it gets too dark. But it was already too late for that. Darkness crept fast in Black Hollow, faster than it should have. The treetops, dense and twisted, blocked the moonlight. The shadows stretched long and sharp, swallowing the trail they'd followed earlier. The forest looked different now, as though the night had rearranged everything. Liam lifted his camera, turning slowly in a circle. The screen flickered with static. Not a lot, just enough to make the hairs on the back of his neck rise. The forest responded to the night. It was alive. It was watching. A cold breeze brushed past Melanie, making her flinch and pull away. Did you feel that? Sarah shook her head. There's no wind. But there was movement. Something subtle, something delicate in the shadows behind the fallen tree. A soft rustling, like leaves shifting under a cautious step. Liam pointed the camera toward the sound. Who's there? He called out, though he wished he hadn't. His voice echoed strangely, as if swallowed up the moment it left his mouth. The rustling stopped. Then tap. A faint sound, like a stone hitting wood. Tap. 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 Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Ethan whipped around. Back up, everyone, back up. He grabbed Melanie's arm, pulling her away from the noise. But the tapping continued. Not closer, not farther, just steady, like a signal, like someone or something was marking time. Liam zoomed the camera. The night swallowed everything beyond 10 feet. The underbrush formed dark shapes that could have been shadows, or something crouching just out of sight. The tapping stopped. A moment of unnerving stillness passed. Then, behind them, snap. A branch breaking. Melanie screamed.
The sound ripped through the clearing, sharp and terrified. Sarah grabbed her by the shoulders. "Don't run. Whatever you do, don't..." Snap. Closer this time. Liam spun around, camera jerking. "There's something behind us." Ethan's voice broke. "We need light. All of our lights, now." They dug through their bags, pulling out flashlights, phone screens, anything that glowed. But the moment they turned them on, something strange happened. The beams of light didn't cut through the darkness. They fizzled, fading into the distance as though the night itself was swallowing them. Melanie held her flashlight out, shaking it violently. "Why isn't it reaching? It's not working. Why isn't it working?" Liam swallowed hard. "It's working. The light is on. The darkness just isn't letting it through." Sarah shivered. "That doesn't make sense." Then a new sound cut her off. Breathing. Not human breathing. Not the sharp, frightened gasps of her friends. This was deeper, ragged, wet, heavy. The kind of breathing you hear when something large hides in the dark. It came from somewhere beyond the tree line, somewhere where their light couldn't reach, somewhere the camera refused to focus. The breathing grew louder, slow at first, then faster, closer. Ethan raised a broken branch like a weapon. "Stay back! Do you hear me? Stay the hell back!" But the forest didn't obey. The breathing circled them, moving from tree to tree with unnatural speed. It echoed from different directions, making it impossible to tell where the creature was. Melanie clamped her hands over her ears, shaking violently. "Make it stop, please make it stop!" Liam tried to steady the camera, but the lens kept glitching, warping shadows, bending them like shapes underwater. The breathing grew louder in the microphone, distorting into a low growl. Then everything stopped. Breathing. Movement. Sound. Even the wind froze. A silence thicker than before wrapped around them. Sarah held her breath. Melanie sobbed quietly. Ethan's grip on the branch loosened. Liam's hands trembled around the camera. And then, from deep within the darkness, from a place no light dared to touch, a new sound drifted through the trees. A voice. Not a whisper this time. A word spoken clearly, slowly, dripping with hunger. Stay. The forest exhaled all at once, and the darkness around them deepened, closing in like a tightening fist. Night had fully claimed Black Hollow, and now, something in that night wanted them.
The forest seemed to breathe around them. Every step the four friends took felt like it pressed them deeper into a living trap. The trees leaned inward, their branches twisting in shapes too unnatural to be ordinary. Fog clung to their ankles and thickened with every movement, curling like fingers across the forest floor. The darkness was complete, but it was not empty. It was alive, watching, waiting. Liam led the group, the camera shaking in his hands as he attempted to document what was happening. Every frame captured warped shadows and twisting shapes that didn't belong to anything human. Melanie clutched Sarah's arm, and Ethan gritted his teeth, gripping a fallen branch as if it could defend them. Then it appeared. 2 points of light, small at first, distant, but piercing through the thick darkness. Eyes. No other features, just glowing eyes, fixed and unblinking. They hovered between the trees, suspended in the mist, unmoving. Liam froze, the camera snapping upward. His shallow breath rattled against the microphone. "Do you see that?" Melanie couldn't speak. Her mouth hung open, but no sound came out. Sarah stepped backwards, tripping over a root, landing hard on the damp soil. The eyes didn't blink. They didn't move. They simply stared. And the weight of that gaze pressed down on them like a physical force. Ethan's voice finally broke through the silence, harsh and shaky. What is that?" "I don't know," Liam whispered. "It's not human, not animal, something else." The two glowing points shifted slightly, sliding silently between the trunks, but never leaving the beam of sight. They seemed almost playful, teasing, aware of the fear they instilled. Then came the sound. A low, rumbling hum, vibrating through the ground beneath their feet. It was faint at first, like a distant growl, but it grew steadily, filling the clearing, drowning out their frantic breathing. It felt alive, resonant, as if the forest itself was humming with anticipation. Melanie shook violently. "We need to go. Now, please." But the trail they had come from had vanished. The trees had rearranged themselves somehow, leaving no clear path back. Every direction looked the same. Endless trunks, twisting shadows, a mist that clung to them like a living thing. Liam pointed the camera again at the eyes. We have to keep moving," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. The eyes reacted. One blinked, a slow, deliberate motion that wasn't human. A blink that seemed to lock onto them individually, measuring fear, panic, despair. They felt the weight of those eyes in their bones, in their lungs, in the tightness of their throats. The hum escalated into a growl, echoing unevenly from tree to tree. The glowing points started to shift closer, not running, not charging, just moving silently, gliding, hovering, observing. Ethan raised his branch like a weapon, though it was useless. "Stay back! Don't come near us!" The eyes tilted as if acknowledging his defiance, and then pulsed slightly brighter. A sensation rolled over the group, cold and suffocating. Every hair on their bodies stood on end. Their hearts hammered so hard they feared the forest would hear them. Melanie cried out, grabbing Sarah's arm. "Run! Run!" But the fog clung to their legs, roots twisted beneath their feet, snagging shoes, tripping them, slowing their escape. The eyes advanced, maintaining distance, but their gaze alone created a magnetic force. Every step the friends tried to take forward felt resisted, as if the forest itself pulled them backwards. Liam's camera caught it all. The screen flickered with static, the distorted images showing only silhouettes, human shapes contorted into something else. The glow from the eyes intensified. They weren't natural, not stars, not reflective animals. They were intentional, calculated, and alive. Suddenly, the forest floor beneath Melanie cracked. She screamed, grabbing Ethan, and for a second it seemed like the earth itself was reacting to their presence. The eyes followed every motion. They didn't move fast, but they didn't need to. The threat was in the observation, in the awareness, in the unblinking attention. And then, from nowhere, a low guttural whisper spread through the air. Unlike before, it didn't come from any direction. It was all around them. It said, "Closer," a sound that seemed to vibrate through the bones, through the skin, making the hair on the nape of the neck curl. Liam tried to shout back, "We're leaving. You hear me? Stay away." The eyes pulsed brighter in response, as though amused. And then something impossible happened. The distance between them and the eyes shrank in an instant. No footsteps, no sound, just movement, fluid, instantaneous, unnatural. The friends screamed, bolting blindly through the underbrush, crashing into trees, tripping over roots. The fog swirled around them, thick and suffocating, masking everything. But in the camera's lens, the eyes were still there, following, unblinking, omnipresent. Every time they tried to stop, to catch their breath,
The gaze returned, stronger, heavier, forcing them onward. Every blink, every pulse of the glow felt like it measured their terror, feeding off of it, growing with it. And then the whispers came again, layered this time, overlapping, incomprehensible but unmistakable. Closer, closer, closer. Their flight carried them deeper into the forest, away from the faint trail they had tried to follow. Every step felt longer, every shadow thicker, every sound amplified. The glowing eyes were everywhere, sometimes barely visible in the distance, sometimes right in front of them, appearing only for a heartbeat. The forest itself seemed alive now, shifting with them, guiding them, corralling them. Their lungs burned, their limbs screamed, but they couldn't stop. And with every heartbeat, every frantic step, every glance at those unblinking lights, the weight of the forest pressed harder, reminding them there was no escape. The eyes followed, always, watching, waiting, hungry.
The forest was no longer merely dark. It had become a living presence, moving with the friends as they stumbled forward. Every snap of a branch underfoot felt deliberate, as though the trees themselves had leaned down to watch them struggle. The fog thickened around their ankles and crept higher with every frantic step, curling like serpents through the roots and rocks. Liam's camera wobbled violently, capturing nothing but the faint outlines of trees and the occasional flash of glowing eyes between them. Melanie gasped, clutching Sarah's arm. I can't do this, it's... Shh, Ethan hissed, gripping a branch like a weapon, though its presence offered no comfort. Keep moving. Don't stop. Just keep moving. The forest answered their movement with a low vibration in the ground, subtle but perceptible, like the thrum of a giant heartbeat beneath the soil. The friends looked at one another, unspoken fear evident in every wide-eyed glance. Even the usual human instinct to call out for help seemed muted here. The woods swallowed sound, devouring voices before they left the throat. A whisper slithered through the trees, so faint they almost missed it. Closer, it breathed. Only this time it wasn't a single voice. It layered itself, overlapping in discordant harmony, coming from every direction at once. The friends spun in panic, but every turn revealed nothing but dark silhouettes, swaying branches, and fog thickening like smoke. Liam's camera caught movement on the periphery. A shadow stretched and slinked between two massive oaks. It was too thin, too tall, bending unnaturally, like something human had been elongated and twisted. And then suddenly, the shadow disappeared, leaving only the faintest glimmer of those glowing eyes, always watching, always unblinking. Melanie screamed, stumbling over a hidden root. The camera jostled violently as Liam grabbed her arm, yanking her upright. We can't stop. We just keep going. Ethan's flashlight flickered, barely illuminating the fog ahead. When the light caught a tree in the distance, the bark looked wrong, twisted into shapes that resembled faces, mouths open in silent screams. The friends froze. No sound came from the trees, yet the air felt filled with hundreds of whispers, impossible to locate. Sarah pointed. Do you see that? Liam turned the camera, barely catching what she was pointing at. A series of fresh carvings etched into the tree trunks glowed faintly in the darkness, symbols too deliberate to be natural. Each cut pulsed softly, almost like veins carrying light. Melanie gagged, backing away. It's alive, she whispered. Everything here is alive. The whispers surged louder, forming words in strange guttural cadences.
follow, deeper, cannot leave. Their meaning was clear even without translation. The forest demanded them. It was not letting them go. The friends ran again, blindly. Every step seemed longer than the last, the fog thickening to the point where it clung to their clothes, slowing them, almost dragging them back. The camera wobbled, catching glimpses of those glowing eyes in every corner of the frame. Sometimes multiple pairs, sometimes just one, always moving, always observing. A branch snapped sharply to their left. They whipped around. Nothing. Yet the whispering shifted instantly. Closer now. Closer. Closer. Ethan tried to shout to break the spell of the forest, but no sound left his mouth. The words caught somewhere in his throat, muffled by the unnatural stillness that pressed in from all sides. Panic surged. He swung the branch wildly, and for a heartbeat, a shadow emerged. Tall, thin, swaying unnaturally, as if bending the very space around it. Then it vanished, leaving only the whispering in its wake. Liam's breathing was ragged. We have to climb, he panted. There's gotta be higher ground. Maybe we can see a way out. The group scrambled towards a ridge in the distance, barely visible through the fog. Every step upward felt like wading through thick liquid. The mist coiled around them, tugging at limbs, slowing their progress. And always the eyes followed, hundreds of them now, glowing faintly through the fog, fixed, unblinking. Suddenly the forest around them seemed to shift violently. Trees leaned in, roots rising from the ground like skeletal fingers. The fog surged upward, dense and suffocating, and the whispers became a chorus. Stay. Deeper. Never leave. Melanie screamed and fell to her knees. Ethan grabbed her, dragging her to her feet, but the moment she touched the ground, the whisper shifted, moving to her specifically, almost like the forest had noticed her fear. Liam pointed the camera at her trembling form. He could see it. Faint, black tendrils curling from the shadows towards her, moving too fast to be anything natural. The air grew colder. Their breath hung visible in the darkness, each exhale trembling in terror. Then one of the glowing eyes appeared directly above the ridge. Liam froze. It hovered in the fog, impossibly large, casting a dim, pulsing glow. It blinked slowly, deliberately, then moved, sliding along the ridge like water, following their frantic ascent. The forest floor seemed to undulate beneath them. Roots twisted, branches snapped, the mist thickened. Every step forward felt like climbing through quicksand. The whispers layered themselves around them again, voices overlapping, sometimes harsh, sometimes almost playful. Closer. Cannot leave. Stay. Melanie's tears streamed down her face. Sarah tried to comfort her, but even her own voice sounded distant, swallowed by the forest. Ethan pushed forward, branch raised, but the shadows around them danced, making it impossible to see where threat ended and forest began. And through it all, the glowing eyes followed, not blinking, not wavering, watching, patient, unrelenting. Liam, barely able to hold the camera steady, panted heavily. We're not alone. We never were. The group climbed higher, reaching the top of the ridge. For the first time, the forest opened slightly, but the space wasn't safe. The shadows stretched endlessly, deeper than the ridge should allow, and through the mist, dozens of glowing eyes emerged, filling the darkness beyond. They weren't just observing anymore. They were waiting. And in the distance, the whispers solidified into one chilling, unmistakable command spoken in a voice older than the forest itself. Come closer. The four friends froze, hearts hammering, realizing too late that there was nowhere left to run. The forest had claimed them, and night had only just begun.
The fog swallowed everything. Every sound, every shape, every shred of familiarity vanished under a thick, creeping white that clung to skin, clothes, and lungs alike. Liam's camera trembled in his hands, catching glimpses of shapes that moved faster than the eye could follow, slinking between the trunks and under low-hanging branches. The ridge they had climbed seemed to offer no refuge. It was just another plateau and an endless forest that refused to obey logic. Melanie clutched Sarah's arm tightly, her nails digging into flesh through fabric. Her teeth chattered, not from cold, but from the raw, unyielding fear that gripped her. Every breath they took fogged in front of their faces, each exhale mixing with the mist as if the forest itself was inhaling their terror. Ethan kept scanning the fog with his flickering flashlight, though he knew it was useless. The light struggled, bending around shadows as if the mist absorbed it. Shapes appeared for an instant, tall, impossibly thin figures, darker than the fog, glowing eyes piercing through. Each blink of the camera captured a fleeting horror, elongated limbs twisting unnaturally, shadows flowing against the wind, silhouettes bending in ways that no human body could. And then came the whispers. Not one voice. Hundreds. Layered, discordant, almost melodic in the way they coiled around the ears, whispering incomprehensible commands, syllables that scraped against the mind. Come closer. Stay. Never leave. Deeper. Melanie screamed again, dropping to her knees. The fog seemed to react, curling upward around her like a living thing, clutching, pushing her down. Ethan grabbed her, pulling her to her feet, but the mist seemed heavier now, pressing against their chests as if it were breathing in rhythm with them. Liam's camera shook violently. The screen caught something moving faster than it could focus. Two shadows darted past, crossing at impossible angles, one above the other, neither making a sound. And then the glowing eyes appeared everywhere, dozens of them, hundreds even, hovering between trunks, floating near the ground, blinking slowly in a pattern too deliberate to be natural. A low rumble rose beneath their feet, vibrating the soil and the air. The whispers intensified, layering into one coherent, terrifying command. Closer. Closer. They tried to run. Every direction felt wrong. Roots reached out like fingers, tripping them, snagging their feet. Branches swiped their faces, leaving scratches that burned with every heartbeat. Each step seemed to reset the forest behind them, erasing the path they had just taken. Sarah stumbled, falling to her hands. The fog around her swirled violently, obscuring her from view. She felt fingers, or what seemed like fingers, brush across her shoulders, cold and hard. She screamed, but the sound was quickly swallowed by the thick mist. Ethan turned, swinging his branch, but nothing was there. The fog moved as if alive, curling and twisting around the empty space,
and then the glowing eyes appeared directly at him, not at the fog, not at the trees, but at him. Liam tried to keep the camera steady, but the lens kept distorting, showing multiple angles of the same shadows, layering the figures, stretching them impossibly long. And the whispers didn't stop. They grew louder, closer, as if coming from their own minds. Come, deeper, stay. Melanie, sobbing uncontrollably, tried to shout, but the forest swallowed her voice. She reached for Sarah, but the mist had pulled her slightly away. The pressure on her chest increased, like the air itself had weight. The glowing eyes multiplied, filling the fog. Some floated at ground level, some hovered at mid-height, some hung above like stars in a warped sky. The shapes accompanying them twisted and moved in ways that defied reality, bodies bending, stretching, folding into the fog, always watching, always waiting. Ethan's voice finally broke. "We have to find shelter." But the forest offered none. Every ridge, every depression, every hollow was full of shadows, eyes, whispers. It was as if the trees themselves had shifted overnight, forming walls, corridors, and chambers designed to trap them. Liam pointed the camera forward. Through the thick mist, he thought he saw a faint light ahead, a flicker, possibly a clearing, possibly a way out. There's a light! Come on! They ran toward it, lungs burning, hearts pounding. But the forest seemed to resist. The mist thickened, roots rose like spikes, and the shadows moved faster, gliding beside them, above them, closing the space they ran through. And then, suddenly, everything went quiet. The whispers stopped. The glowing eyes vanished. The fog itself froze in midair. A voice, louder than before, commanding, ancient, echoed through the trees. "You cannot leave." The friends froze, the ground trembling beneath their feet. The forest was holding them. The mist pulsed like lungs, expanding and contracting with measured precision. Melanie fell to her knees, rocking back and forth. Ethan dropped his branch, clutching his head. Sarah's breath came in short, ragged gasps. Leon's camera captured everything: the frozen fog, the still shadows, the empty air that seemed to hum with intent. And then, a sound. Low, wet, deliberate footsteps approaching from all directions at once. No source, no shadow, just the sound. Slowing, pacing, calculating. The glowing eyes returned, appearing directly around them now, encircling the group in a perfect ring, each blink synchronized with the pulsing of the forest itself. And in the center, the fog parted just enough to reveal something massive, something taller than any tree, its form almost indistinct, yet undeniably present. The whispers returned, louder, screaming through the minds of the four friends. "Stay, forever, ours." And in that instant, the four understood. The forest wasn't just alive, it was sentient. It had been waiting, and they were already too deep. Nightfall had completed its claim.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. See you in the next one. Bye for now.